No one ever expects to be chosen by a predator. But that morning, he was. He had walked that trail 100 times before. It was quiet, safe, familiar. A path through the golden grasslands he thought he understood. But something was off. The birds weren't singing. The wind felt still. Then he heard it. Not the roar of a lion, but something far more haunting. A low, trembling cry, like grief in the form of sound. He turned slowly, and there she was. A lioness, alone, eyes wide, glowing with pain, her body thin, her legs trembling, her breath heavy with exhaustion. But she didn't charge. She didn't growl. Instead, she wept. In her mouth hung a tiny, fragile cub, limp, motionless, barely clinging to life. Blood at its nose, its chest barely rising. The lioness looked at him, not like an animal, like a mother. And then, impossibly, she approached, step by step, slowly, like every movement took all the strength she had left. He didn't move, not out of bravery, but disbelief. She closed the distance, and placed the cub gently at his feet, then stepped back, and sat, watching, trusting, as if this man, this stranger, might do what the wild could not. He looked down. The cub's eyes were closed, but it was alive, barely, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. Not fear, not logic, not survival, only this. A mother had given him her child, and he could not let it die. He knelt without thinking, hands trembling, as he reached for the cub. It was lighter than he expected, warm but fading. Its tiny chest rose and fell with a desperate rhythm, the kind of breathing that whispered, "I'm still here, but not for long." Behind him, the lioness didn't move. She didn't growl. She only watched, her tail still, her eyes locked on his hands. And he understood. This wasn't surrender. It was faith. He unzipped his jacket and placed the cub gently inside, close to his chest. The little body twitched. "Hold on," he whispered. Then he stood. The lioness didn't follow. She looked at him one last time, her face full of something between sorrow and peace. Then she turned and walked away. No sound, no fight, just silent retreat into the tall grass. He stood there, frozen, watching her disappear. That image would haunt him forever. A queen of the wild, disappearing into gold, alone. But she had left something behind, a flicker of hope, and now it was in his hands. He ran, through the field, over roots and rocks, breath pounding in rhythm with the cub's weak pulse. Every step was a prayer. Stay alive, just a little longer. The sun was climbing now, casting long shadows behind him, and for the first time, he wasn't just a man on a walk. He was something more, a protector, a bridge between worlds, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at rewriting nature's law. The vet looked at him like he was insane. "You're telling me a lioness gave you her cub?" He didn't argue. He just opened his jacket. The cub let out a faint cry, like a whisper from the edge of death. That was enough. Within seconds, they moved. Oxygen, fluids, gentle hands, urgency, and he just stood there, watching, waiting, wondering if any of it would be enough. The vet returned, hours later, removing her gloves slowly, her face unreadable. "She brought it just in time," she said. His chest dropped with relief. The cub would live, but the lioness, she was still out there, alone. So the next morning, he returned. Same trail, same silence. He stood where she had left him, and he waited, not for minutes, for hours. He didn't bring the cub, not yet. It wasn't strong enough. But he brought her scent, a cloth, a whisper of what she'd lost. And somehow, she came, out of the shadows, cautious, but calm. She looked at him again, not like prey, not like threat, but like someone who knew, someone who remembered. He held out the cloth. She approached slowly, sniffing it once, Then she sat, and in that moment, they were no longer man and beast. They were two guardians of the same fragile life, a silent bond forged by desperation and trust. 3 days passed. The cub survived the night. Then another, then another. It opened its eyes. It cried faintly at first, then louder. It drank milk from a bottle with tiny trembling paws. It clung to life. Not because it was strong, but because something or someone refused to let go. The man stayed by its side, through every hour, every sound, as if keeping a promise to the lioness who had vanished into the grass. On the 4th day, the vet spoke gently. It's time. The cub was strong enough now. He carried it in his jacket again, just like before, but this time, it moved. It squirmed. It cried. It lived. And the man walked back to that same place, where wild met human, where instinct met miracle. He stood beneath the same tree, the sun falling like fire behind him, and waited. Minutes passed, then an hour, then the grass parted, and she came. Slowly, silently, her eyes locked on him, and then on the bundle in his arms. He knelt, unwrapped the cloth, and placed the cub gently on the earth. The lioness didn't move. The cub let out a single cry. She stepped forward, 1 step, then 2. She sniffed, then licked the cub's head. Once, a sound came from her chest. Not a roar, not a growl, but something softer, something grateful. And in that moment, the wild had been returned, what it thought it had lost. He didn't stay long after the reunion. Some part of him knew this moment wasn't his to own. The wild doesn't say thank you. It doesn't offer closure. It only moves forward. The lioness nudged her cub gently, lifting it with her jaw. She looked at him once more. No fear, no threat, just knowing. Then turned and vanished into the tall grass, carrying her child. He stood there long after they were gone, not because he expected her to return, but because something inside him had changed. The world had always taught him that wild meant danger, that lions don't love, that humans and beasts are meant to fear each other. But he had seen something else. A mother in mourning, a cry for help, and a choice to trust. Days passed, then weeks. Sometimes on his morning walks, he'd leave a piece of meat under that tree, not to tame, not to bribe, just to honor the moment. And sometimes, not always, the meat would be gone. The next day, no tracks, no sound, just absence. And that was enough. He never told anyone the full story, not because he was afraid they wouldn't believe him, but because some stories don't need to be explained. They need to be remembered, as proof that even in a world of instinct and survival, there are moments of grace, of mercy, of impossible connection. And sometimes, the wild chooses you.